Alrighty. Hi, good evening or good afternoon, Gate Scholars. My name is Brandon Brown, and I serve as the Scholar Relations Coordinator for the Gates Millennium Scholars Program. And I'm so happy to welcome you all to today's edition of Ask GMS. Today we have a very wonderful session lined up for you all that's all aimed at helping you all to ace the GRE, which is the Graduate Record Examination. Most of you will know that if you plan on attending graduate school. But we're also going to touch on some of the other exams that are required for your graduate school entry. I know it's at 7:01 right now, so we're going to give a few more minutes to make sure that we allow others the opportunity to sign in and to sign on, and then we'll get this session underway, okay? So hang tight for a few moments. All righty.
Okay, Brandon, do you see my screen? It should be coming on in a moment.
Yes, I certainly do.
We're back. So if that happens again, you'll text me and I'll go out and come back in.
All righty, sounds good.
I'm actually kind of glad that happened already because we've just had good practice.
I agree. And it looks like we have about 9 or 10 people already on YouTube looking at it. So
Cool.
people already. So I'll give about another moment or two, and then I'll move forward with the intro pieces, and then we'll get to the presentation.
Sounds good.
All right.
Should we get started, Brandon?
I think we are ready. Yes,
All right.
indeed.
Let's go.
All righty. So everyone, thank you once again for tuning in to today's edition of Ask GMS, all about preparing for the GRE. So first, I want to make sure that everyone tuning in knows that as a GATE scholar, you do have access to one GRE fee reduction waiver during your time as a scholar. And so, as I said, one, because we do have a limited supply of GRE vouchers, and we have way more scholars than we do vouchers. So we do limit that to one voucher per scholar during your time as a funded scholar. But in order to access that, all you have to do is email academic support at gmsp.org and include your name and your GMS ID. And as long as you haven't received one already, and we have vouchers currently in stock, then we'll make sure that we follow up with you and provide you with one so that you can register for the exam. And usually the vouchers that we'll provide you are good for a little under a year. So it's not like you have to, it's not like we'll send you a voucher and you have to immediately register for the exam. So sometimes people will email us before they know when they want to take the exam, just to make sure that they get the voucher. But I do encourage you to keep an eye on that voucher expiration date so that you don't let the deadline pass before registering for the exam. But remember that email academic support at gmsp.org to receive that voucher, okay? So in addition to that, please allow 3 to 4 weeks for processing. So don't email us on tomorrow if you want to take the exam next week. That's a little bit short notice, so allow 3 to 4 weeks for processing on those vouchers, okay? I also want to make sure before we get started that you understand that we will have a short Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. Please send your questions via social media using the hashtag AskGMS, that is ASK, GMS. And I'll make sure that I'm going through and monitoring, looking at the questions, and then at the end, we'll pull some questions that weren't already covered during the presentation, and we'll ask them to our wonderful presenter. And speaking of, I'm going to go ahead and give a brief introduction of our presenter right now. So tonight we have with us Mr. Jay Rosner, who is a test prep expert based in San Francisco, who's worked with organizations all around the country. He regularly does presentations to students on the GRE and graduate admissions tests. Jay has done in-person GRE workshops at several UNCF conferences and has previously done GRE webinars for UNCF and other organizations serving underrepresented scholars around the country. So, Jay, we're excited to have you with us this evening, and we look forward to having an insightful and informative session. So, everyone, I present to you Mr. Jay Rosner.
Thank you, Brandon. And I'm looking forward to giving folks on this webinar the best possible information I can give you on the GRE. The GRE is, as you know, an important exam. It has considerable weight in admissions, and it's important that you be able to do your best on that exam. Most of what I'm going to be saying this evening will also apply to the LSAT, the Law School Admissions Test, and the GMAT, the Business School Admissions Test. And that's because these 3 tests are approached in a similar manner. You do separate preparations, but the approach is similar. Now, who takes what test? This is just a little overview in case you're aware of the GRE, but you don't know about these other tests, so that everybody is on the same page. The GRE is the admissions test required by most competitive master's and PhD programs. Many MBA programs now accept the GRE, and the MBA degree program in Graduate Business School was a degree where the admissions test previously was exclusively the GMAT, but graduate business schools, more and more of them now are accepting the GRE. But it's mostly for master's and PhD programs, and I have the little acronym CBT after GRE. That means it's a computer-based test. And what a computer-based test is a test taking a pencil and paper test and putting it on the computer. In other words, you'll have a section of perhaps 20 questions on the GRE, and you'll be able to skip questions and move around the section and do them in any order you choose. That's the GRE. The LSAT is still a pencil and paper test. That's the PNP in parentheses. And the LSAT is required by all ABA-approved law schools. An ABA-approved law school is a law school that graduates of that law school can take the bar exam in any state in the country. The final test that I'll be talking about, although this webinar will be mostly on the GRE, as I said, a lot of the webinar will apply to these other two tests, is the GMAT. Most MBA programs require the GMAT. As I said, now some MBA programs will accept the GRE. The GMAT is a computer adaptive test. That's the CAT in parentheses. And that's a test that's a little bit different. There's a question on the screen, on the computer screen, and you must answer that question in order to get to the next question. You can't move around in a section like you can on the GRE. So both those tests are delivered on computer, but the mechanism is a little bit different, as I've explained. Now, I have a term that I use so that I don't have to keep saying GRE and LSAT and GMAT. If I mention the Grad tests, that applies to all three of these tests. So the first question that I'll address here is, what do the Grad tests measure? These three tests, what do they measure? And here's my opinion of what the Grad tests actually measure. Do they measure how intelligent you are? In my opinion, the answer is no, they do not. Do they measure how well you'll do in graduate or professional school? Well, you might think so, but actually my answer is no. Now the tests, the GRE, the LSAT, and the GMAT, help a little bit in predicting your first year GPA in graduate school. That's not very much. It's something, it's not very much. So when students tell me, as students have over the years, wow, my GRE score is not that good, I'm probably not graduate school material, I have to tell them, no, that's not the right conclusion. If your GRE scores aren't very good, number one, you want to try to make them better, but number two, that doesn't mean that you won't be successful in graduate school, because the tests don't help predict very well how well you'll do in graduate school. They only help a little bit in predicting your first year graduate school GPA. Again, it's something, it's not very much. So, do the Grad tests actually measure how good you are at the Grad tests? And the answer is yes. That's exactly what they measure, but that's all they measure. So someone you know who has a high GRE score, are they smart? Maybe, maybe not. What do we know? The only thing we know is they're good at the GRE. Someone else with a modest GRE score, a not very good GRE score, are they smart? Maybe, maybe not. What do we know? All we know is they're not very good at the GRE, at least not right now. They can get better, but that's all we know. So if you have a great GRE score, or GMAT score, LSAT score, it means you're good at that test. And if you don't, you can take steps, and that's smart preparation to improve your score. And that's what I'm going to be focused on tonight in this webinar. How you can get your best GRE score, or your best grad score if you're taking one of the other tests. So these are survey questions that I usually ask in my presentations that I do live and in person, and we didn't have a chance to get up polling questions tonight. I'm always curious as to how many college grads, rising seniors, college grads, seniors, juniors, sophomores, etc., that we have on the webinar. And I often wonder who took an official test among the folks attending the webinar. It's usually in a group like this, a relatively small number. And I'm often curious who did intensive preparation for that test. But as I said, since we don't have polling questions, I'm not going to be able to find that out for the folks on the webinar this evening. But I did want to pull up one question for you to think about. And I'm wondering how many of you played at least one full season of a high school sport. I'm taking you back to high school now. You were in the school play, the orchestra, the band, the yearbook, the newspaper, any activity where you went after school, the math team, I don't know, any activity where you went after school every day for 2 or 3 months. I asked that question, and it seems a little bit out of place in a graduate school admissions test webinar, but you'll see how I'll connect that later. When I ask this question in my live presentations, when I have an audience in front of me, almost everybody raises their hand. Sometimes there are folks who had to work after school or had childcare responsibilities, but nearly everyone has done this. Here's the breakdown of the GRE. Let's go right to the GRE, and I'll have a couple of GRE-specific slides here. There's an analytical writing section that basically consists of 2 essays. You're typing what they call an issue task for 45 minutes, and you're typing an argument task for 30 minutes. Those are essays, and the important thing to remember about the essays are that they are the least important section of the GRE. It's not something you blow off. You want to write good essays. But the most important sections are what follows: the 2 verbal sections that you can see on your screen, and the 2 quant sections, quantitative or math. Sometimes I'll refer to them as math. I'm referring to the quant sections. Those are sections where you click on a bubble. This is a bubble test, but instead of filling in bubbles with number 2 pencils like you did on the SAT or ACT, you're going to click on a bubble on your screen. So it's a multiple choice, verbal and quantitative test primarily. Those are your 2 most important scores. Now, there's also one unscored section. So everyone taking the GRE will have either 3 verbal sections and 2 quant sections, or 2 verbal sections and 3 quant sections. In other words, an extra section of either one. You won't know which one it is. It looks just like a regular verbal or quant section. At the end of the test, you'll be able to think, oh yeah, I had 3 quant sections. One of them didn't count. So one section, either verbal or quant, is unscored. We call it the variable or the experimental section. It doesn't count. And you don't know which section that is. So you have to treat all 5 of those sections as if they're real sections that count, because you won't know which one doesn't count. There's a final section, and it's very, very rare. I've talked to hundreds of students who've taken the GRE, and no one has ever had this, so they give it to relatively few students. It's a research section, and they'll give you a GRE section where they tell you, this section doesn't count. And then you can do with it whatever you want. But the important thing to remember is all of you will have one section that doesn't count, and you won't know which one that is. And so you just have to do all the verbal sections and all the quant sections to the best of your ability to get your best score. Another slide on the GRE. The GRE was revised in 2011. So 5 years ago, they revised the GRE. And one of the things that they did is they changed the score range. And now the score range used to be from 200 to 800, which most of you remember from the SAT. Now the score range is 130 to 170. And while that looks a lot different than 200 to 800, it's really pretty similar, because if you dropped the zeros at the end of 200 to 800, it would be 20 to 80. If you put ones in front of that, it would be 120 to 180. And so what this is 120 to 180, but just reduced a little bit. Lowest score is not 120, it's 130. The lowest score is not 180, it's 170. So they just massaged the scoring a little bit and changed the numbers around, but it's pretty much the same thing, with 150 being a national average score, approximately 150. I might be 151 or so. And that's a verbal and quant score, and then you get a separate score, 0 to 6, on analytic. And as I said, the analytic are the essays, the least important, given the least weight by graduate schools. So the GRE is a verbal and math test with no science on it. How much harder is GRE math than SAT or ACT math? A little, a lot, or really a lot? And I wish we had a polling question on this, because it's always fun to see. So I'll give you just a moment to think about that. How would you answer this question? How much harder is GRE math than SAT or ACT math? A little, a lot, or really a lot? Well, the answer to this question might surprise you a little bit. It's none of the above. The GRE math is actually a little bit easier than SAT or ACT math. And you may say to yourself, well, how can that be? How can the test for college on the math side be actually a little bit easier, not a lot, a little bit easier than the test for graduate school on the math side? And the answer, if you think about it, is most of you, if you're juniors or seniors or even recent grads, have not had math for a couple of years. Most of you. Now, if you're in engineering, math, science, you're in STEM, you've had math. If you're in any of the humanities, you probably haven't had math since freshman year. And so most folks taking the GRE have not had math in years. And if math were made very difficult, most students would be crushed by math. So it's not that difficult. In fact, it's not easy, but it's actually even a little easier than SAT or ACT math. One of the challenges for students taking the GRE, though, is to refresh yourself and to bring your math skills up to speed, to polish off all that rust that you have since you haven't seen math in a while. And that's part of what GRE Prep is for, and we'll talk about that. So here are questions you might have. When I start out these webinars, I also always want to throw out the half a dozen most common questions that people ask about the GRE, and here they are. Do I need to do GRE test prep is one often asked question, and the answer is pretty simple. If you want to get your best score, you have to do test prep. And I'll talk about that with at least one slide, maybe two, later in the webinar. So I'll give you much more information on that question. But the answer is, if you want to get your best score, yes. If you don't need to get your best score, on a rare occasion, an admissions officer will tell you, look, your record is great. We want you as a student. Just go take the GRE. It doesn't matter what you get. I've had a few students tell me that over years. Not many, just a handful. But unless you're in that category, you want to get your best score, and you should do GRE Prep, and I'll explain to you more about that. What's a good study plan for GRE Prep? How and when should I study? I have a couple of slides on that. How often should I take practice GREs? I'll have a slide on that. So these are questions I'll answer in the webinar. When should I take my official GRE test, and how many times? Well, I'll talk about how many times in the webinar. When should you take your official GRE test? Spring of the junior year is a sweet spot for test taking, and I'll talk about that a little more. Now, Brandon mentioned that there are GRE vouchers through your GMS program. But if you've already used a GRE voucher or for some reason you can't get one, and
All right, everyone, hold tight. I think we probably had a technical issue, but Jay will be back shortly. So just give us a few moments and we'll get everything picked back up. All right? Alrighty, so have you all been getting something out of this so far? Feel free, tweet me, put a comment on the video, hashtag AskGMS. Also, again, feel free if you do have any questions thus far, go ahead and make sure you send them on over via social media. But yeah, like I said, I think we encountered a few technical difficulties, but we'll get Jay back up here in a few moments. Actually, as we wait, we could do some informal polling using Twitter. So um, if you are able to log onto your Twitter account and tweet us and let us know which of the grad tests are you planning to take and what level are you? Are you a current scholar pursuing your undergrad degree, or maybe you already graduated and are currently taking some time off, but getting ready to go back to school? So go ahead, tweet us, let us know. Hashtag AskGMS at Gate Scholars on Twitter. All right. All right. So it looks like we should be reconnecting momentarily with Jay. So, all right. And thanks. I see Callan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Thanks for tweeting us. So it looks like you are a recent college grad planning to take the GRE. All right. So hopefully you're getting a lot of good info tonight. So yeah, go ahead and keep those tweets coming in, and I'm about to turn it right back over to Jay. Okay. All righty. So the joys of technology is that when it works, it really works, and when it doesn't, it really doesn't. But I think that as soon as we get the other side unmuted, I think we should be squared away to keep pushing through. So I think we're gonna take a moment or so to get that squared away. And like I said, in the meantime, keep your tweets coming through. I'll read off another one.
Brandon, I think I'm back on.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much for coming back to hang out with us.
Okay, I'm hoping that I don't go off again. I'm going to get beyond this one point, and I'm going to put my whole screen on there. I do workshops for graduate admissions officers, and there are some of the schools listed. I have great collaborations with lots of great organizations. And actually, it's important for you to know that I've been a test critic for over 20 years. I believe that these tests aren't any good, but I certainly acknowledge that they're important. They're very important. They're very significant in admissions. And while I believe that our university should be more diverse and that more underrepresented students should be admitted to four-year universities, the test scores become very important and in some ways a barrier to students gaining access. So while I don't believe the tests are any good, I work very, very hard helping students like you improve your scores, get your best scores so that you can attain admission to the university program of your choice. So with that in mind, I'm interested in helping you get your best scores, and I'm going to show you one great GRE test taking technique. And this is a text completion question, and it involves a counterintuitive approach. Counterintuitive means it's against your intuition. Your intuition will tell you one thing, but what you really should do is the opposite. So there's a kind of tricky aspect to this, and I will show you. So those of you who took the SAT will remember questions like this. Text completion questions are questions that there's a blank in the question and you fill in the blank. And here you'll see, I'll put up on the screen, a very difficult text completion question. See, that's a tough one. And here are the answer choices. Tough answer choices. This is a difficult question. Now, you may be thinking, there's some kind of code here. If I can crack this code, if I can figure out the formula here, I can get the correct answer. Let me tell you, there's no code here. There's no formula. I just had fun hitting a lot of X's with my fingers. I did this because if I put words in there, you'd be reading the words and you wouldn't be listening to me. And I'd rather you listen to me, and I'd rather you not try to crack the code, because there is no code. Those are just a bunch of random X's separated into 24 words because I wanted a total of 25 words. I didn't put words in there because the structure of this question is what I will use to show you the best way to answer it. So we don't need the words to show you the structure. So you see the structure. And the goal here is to put in the word from the answer choices that best fits the sentence. You don't know what the sentence is. Neither do I. But the method I'm going to teach you, with the method I'm going to teach you, it doesn't matter what the sentence is. So there's the sentence, and I'll show you how most students do this question, and they do it in an inefficient and ineffective way, typically. Most students will read this question, 24 words, and they'll plug in answer choice A while they read it. So they've read 25 words. Then they'll read it again and plug in B. They've read 50 words. Again with C, 75, D, 100, E, 125 words. Most students will read 125 words to try to do this question. That's a lot of words. That's not the way I do it. The way I do it involves reading far fewer words. Let me show you my method. For my method, I want to fill in my own word in the blank that best completes the sentence. But this is very important. I want to do it without looking at the answer choices. So one of the things that I will do, and I did this when I took the GRE in 2011, is I'm righty, I put my left hand up on the computer screen and I covered the answer choices. Go ahead, you can practice that. If you're righty, put your left hand up. If you're lefty, put your right hand up and literally cover the answer choices. Now, you don't have to touch your screen to smudge it up. You can keep your hand an inch away from your screen, but cover up the answer choices. And then I would write with my right hand on the scratch paper that they give you at the GRE, my word that best filled in the blank, okay? Then I take my hand down, you take your hand down, and I'd compare my word to A. So I've read 24 words, put in my word, 25. And then I compare my word to A, 26, 27. I compare my word to B, 28, 29, C, 30, 31, D, 32, 33, E, 34, 35. I read 35 words. I don't read 125 words. I read 35 words. It's faster, quicker, safer. I get the correct answer much more quickly. And the GRE is a tightly timed test. So you want to get your answer really quickly and move on to the next question. You want to get a correct answer.
All right, it looks like we are experiencing a few more technical difficulties, but never to fear. We will get back up and running shortly, all right? In the meantime, go ahead and send a few more tweets over my way. I'll read those off in a second. And, okay, give me a moment. All right, let's go over to Twitter and see what's going on. All righty. So let's see. All right, so I have a couple of questions up here. All right, so I see Aaron Johnson asks, what is the email address for the GRE Fee Reduction Waiver? That is academicsupport@gmsp.org. Again, academicsupport@gmsp.org. And I'll also retweet the answer out to that question, okay? I see a few more people have chimed in. Let me know where they're coming from. So let's see. We have Juan Carlos at hey_Juan Carlos. I just wanted to say your handle because I think it's pretty fun. So you're a senior computer science major at Creighton University, looking to take the GRE, and you're looking to go into a computer science grad program. Awesome. All right, and I see we have Anna Rose. We have the little rose emoji up there. Recent UCLA grad, applying for a master's in occupational therapy. All right. But yeah, oh, and hey, unfortunately, that isn't under one of the 7 funded areas, but I too am glad that GMS does provide other opportunities, especially because it does allow us to continue working with great scholars like yourself, Anna Rosa. So thanks so much for tweeting us. All righty. Anybody that hasn't already tweeted us, go ahead. Tweet over at Gate Scholars on Twitter, hashtag AskGMS. All right. And Jay will be back up in a moment. I already see him kind of warming up, so he should be back up in a moment, okay? Hang tight. All right.
Okay, do you hear me? Am I back,
do.
Brandon?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. And my screen should be coming up in a moment.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, so the last thing I said, in case I cut off right beforehand, was that with my method of writing in your own word and then comparing it to the answer choices, you're only reading 35 words in this question, not 125 words. and it goes much more quickly, much more safely. You're highly likely to get the correct answer more quickly. But the last thing I said is you have to practice this technique. Just by telling it to you doesn't mean you can do it. And one of the most important things to practice doing a lot of questions is being able to write in your own correct word. That's very important. So let's do this on an actual text completion question. This question has been on the GRE website for a couple of years now as a sample question. And I'll let you read the question and think about which word you would use to best fill in that blank. Now, I'll tell you, hopefully you've all had, and everybody write down a word if you have a writing implement. Hopefully you do. Write down your word and let's see how good your word is. Now, the word that most often I get for this is gradually. And you'll see gradually kind of fits, but it's really not the best word to put in there. And I'll show you just in a moment. So you've covered the answer choices. You've written down your word. Now let's look at some answer choices. I'm going to start from the back end, from E, slightly. Gradually, slightly, that's sort of close. Maybe we'll leave that in there. We won't cross it off. Gradually, precariously. Well, precariously means dangerously. So that can be crossed off. That's not a good match for gradually. And you figure out whether it's a good match for your word. Irregularly and gradually, that's not so good. That's not that close a match. Imperceptibly and gradually. Well, that's B and E look pretty good here. Imperceptibly and slightly work pretty well with gradually. And permanently, that doesn't work. So that's not a good match. So gradually works okay with B and E. But let me give you the better word to put in there that would have led you right to. So by the way, gradually is not bad. If you get down to 2 answer choices, you have a 50-50 guess. That's actually a good thing. Good aggressive guessing, eliminating wrong answers is a good way to approach many GRE questions. And you'll learn that in your test prep. So the better word than gradually would have actually been, you wouldn't have to invent your own word. You could just take words from the sentence because the key words are not no. You could put in here, in parts of the Arctic, the land grades into the land-fast ice, so
Alrighty. So once again, we're experiencing a few technical difficulties. Like I said, wow, this technology thing, when it works, it really works. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. But we're going to make the best out of this. I do see I have a few questions coming over on YouTube, so I'm about to address some of those. And in the meantime, continue to tweet us, also tag us on Facebook. Sorry I didn't mention that earlier. I know everyone doesn't have Twitter, so don't mean to be exclusive. Go ahead and hit us on those other platforms as well. And I'm going to work with Jay to get them back up and running, and I'll also be tending to your questions, okay? All right, so let's see what questions I have up here. All right, so we went through the email address. Let's see, and Jay is already coming back up. So it's getting quicker and quicker each time that we drop off. So let's see, do you think it's worthwhile to pay for a test prep class? We'll see about that question by the end of the presentation. We'll see what Jay has to say on that. Let's see. And I'm really anxious about the content. Okay, so I see the question from Emma about the quantitative section. So we'll see if Jay gets to that during this presentation. And if he doesn't, I'm sure that many other people have that question as well. I mean, heck, I even have that question as I even think about trying to take the GRE again. So keep your questions coming in, keep your comments coming in on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and we'll be back up and running shortly, all right? Let's see, I'm going over to Twitter now, seeing what I have on here. Let's see. Notifications. Let's see. Let's see what's anything going on over on Facebook. Not at the moment. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Right. Hey, so while we're waiting to get back up and running, have any of you already taken either the grad test before? I haven't seen anyone really mention anything about their experience there, but I'm pretty sure that everyone else would love to hear about it. So if you've taken the Lsat, the GRE, or the MCAT, or the GMAT, I didn't really mean the MCAT, I meant the GMAT. But if you've taken any of those exams before, go ahead and tweet us. Let us know about your experience with that. Alrighty, and actually, go ahead and continue doing that. And Jay is about to be back up and running. Alrighty, so go ahead, keep those comments coming in, and
Okay, I think we're back, aren't we, Brandon?
Yes, we are.
Okay. How many times should you plan to take an official GRE test? Or if you've taken it before, how many more times? The correct answer is once. Prepare in a smart way, get it right the first time or the next time. Notice I have a little DMV there in parentheses. That's to remind me of another question to ask you. If I were to ask you, how many times did you plan to take the driver's license test, what would your answer be? It would be once. You didn't want to mess that thing up. You wanted to get that one right the first time. Well, the GRE is pretty important. Why wouldn't you want to do the same thing with the GRE? But you want to have a backup test date, a fallback test date in mind if you need it or want it. So I like to talk about a target test date, the day you're going to go in and get your best score. However, if something happens and that doesn't happen, you have a backup test date planned. For the GRE, it should be maybe 3-4 weeks later so that you can maybe take a week off, recharge your batteries, and then do a couple of weeks of practice before you go in and take the test again. So a target test date and a backup test date. But folks take grad tests more often. Why? Well, maybe nobody told them that they should take it once. Nobody told them that they should prepare in a smart way before they went in and get their best score the first time. It's unfortunate. People are taking these tests way too often. You should take it once. No sin in taking it twice. Better and cheaper and easier to take it once. And let me tell you, the happiest test takers, by far the happiest test takers, and I've talked to hundreds of them, hundreds of test takers, the happiest test takers are the test takers who prepare well, take it once, get their best score, and they're done with it. When ideally should most students take an official grad test? Spring of the junior year, after prep. Scores are good for 5 years. So if you get a good test score while you're an undergraduate, you can go out and work and do other things. Those scores are good for 5 years. You can use them for graduate school, for law school, for MBA school 5 years later. And unfortunately, most people weren't advised by a campus advisor to do this. This is the single most important slide I'm going to show you coming up. How much grad prep I recommend. This is a test prep plan for GRE or the other tests. These are minimums, whether you're taking a course or you're self-prepping. 2 to 3 hours a day of high quality practice. By the way, if you're taking any notes, or if you're not taking any notes, you might want to take notes on this slide. It's the single most important slide I'm showing you. 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 to 6 days per week, for 7 to 8 weeks, right up to the test. That's a good GRE prep plan. Also, 4 to 5 practice tests, not more than 1 per week, spaced out from about every 10 days to 2 weeks, as markers through your preparation to give you a sense of how you're improving, how a full test feels, just to give you the practice test experience that you need, so that when you go in to take the official test, it's like you're taking a full test for the 4th or 5th time. You know how it feels, you know what you need to do to get your best score, you're well prepared, and you're ready. Now, if you do
Hey, and I'm back, scholars. So I'm sure, again, Jay will be back up momentarily. And I know it's been a lot of, it's been disjointed with the hiccups with the technology, but don't worry, we'll also make sure that we get the presentation up in some form or fashion. So I'll speak with Jay about seeing if we can get the presentation uploaded somewhere for everyone. And everything to make sure that you all have access to it, because I know it's been a little bit hard to kind of follow along at times. But thank you all for being a gracious audience and hanging in there with us. Keep on sending your questions through. I'll continue to check those and get some responses out. And yep, just hang tight. Like I said, I can see when Jay pops back up. So I see him trying to get back on right now. And as soon as we can, we'll get back into the content of the presentation. All right. So keep those questions and comments coming in. Look at me trying to talk to you all while I'm on mute. Okay, I see Jay is hopping back up. And as he gets the presentation up and running, I did want to shout out at They Call Me When for graduating in May 2015 and planning on taking the GRE to enter into an MPH program, which does fall under one of the 7 funded areas for GMS. All right, I think I see Jay's presentation is loaded back up, so I'm going to turn the floor back over to him.
Thank you, Brandon. And sorry that we're going out here. We'll figure out what this glitch is about for next time, but we'll make our way through it. So this evening. If you get nothing else this evening, and with all this cutting out and cutting back, it's hard to follow, I know. But this is the single most important slide I'm showing you because it's a good GRE prep plan. Now, there are two other ways to think about this. One way, see, test prep might not make a lot of sense to folks, but if you're an artistic performer, you're a singer, a dancer, a musician, an actor, or if you have a sense of artistic performance, you know there's something that goes on before an important artistic performance, and that's rehearsal. No artist who's facing a really important performance would ever consider for a moment not doing a very intensive rehearsal to practice their skills and make sure that their performance will be just as good as it can be. The best performance requires really good rehearsal. Well, what you see on your screen is rehearsal for the GRE. And if you don't do good rehearsal, you're not going to give your best performance. It just makes sense. If you don't have a good feeling for music, for example, if you have a good feeling for athletics, if you're an athlete, you know that before an important game or match or meet or event, an athletic event, something goes on, and it's called practice and training. And an athlete will train and practice to perfect their skills to give their best possible performance at the event, at the game, at the meet. Another way to think about what you're seeing on this screen as athletic practice or athletic training. And remember that goofy thing question I asked you right at the beginning, whether you played a high school sport. This time period here is a little more than half a season of a high school sport. So it's a significant time period. I mean, it takes real time and energy, but it's not going to kill anybody. And you've all spent that kind of time and energy on specific endeavors in your past, outside of school, kind of extracurricular activities, numerous times in the past. You can do this. It requires a serious commitment. It's not going to kill anybody. So if it looks like a lot of time for you, you just be thinking to yourself, well, this is a little more than half a season of a high school sport, maybe 2/3 of a season of a high school sport, I don't know. But it's less than a season of a high school sport. And believe me, the important role that the GRE plays in graduate school admissions makes this investment of time a really good investment. Here's a little slide for you to show you this is my burnout slide. More is not always better. Better is better. I hope that animal gets down pretty quickly, but that cart is going nowhere. More is not always better. Better is better. This is the second most important slide I'll show you. And maybe we'll stop. I have some slides after this, but we're going on a little overtime with the cutting in and cutting out. So Brandon, I think we'll stop after this particular slide. This is the test prep goal. And the goal is PACES. That's an acronym. Each letter stands for a word. And I like PACES because the GRE and the Lsat and the GMAT are very tightly timed tests. You want to move through getting in as many correct answers as you can in a short period of time. You kind of need to push yourself through the test. And so the goal is to honestly say, right before walking into the official GRE, the P stands for plan. I had a good preparation plan. And all of you have a good preparation plan because I've given it to you. It's 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 to 6 days per week for 7 to 8 weeks, 4 to 5 practice tests. That's a good preparation plan. So you all have a good plan, but you need to be able to say the A in PACES, which stands for acted. You acted on your plan. You did your plan. You carried it out. You implemented your plan. You prepared intensively and thoroughly for the time period that I talked about. The C stands for actually 3 different words. You're confident, you're calm, and you're comfortable. You're primed for your best effort. How can you say that when you walk into the official test? You can say that because You had a good plan, and you implemented your plan. You prepared thoroughly. You're ready to take the test. That kind of preparation breeds a real confidence, not a false confidence, but an actual confidence that you're well prepared. You know that when you walk into a situation well prepared, you know what you're going to face, you know what you're going to do. You tend to be calm. You tend to feel like you're in control of the situation. And comfortable also goes along with calmness, but there's another aspect to comfortable. You should go and scope out the test site where you're going to take the test a week before at the same time. If you're taking this test on a Saturday morning, or if you're taking the test on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning or a Wednesday morning, and I'm going to suggest most of you will do better taking the test in the morning, even if you think you're an afternoon person, because most people have more energy in the morning. You would go to the test center. Let's say you're taking a test on Tuesday. I suggest you go to the test center the same time the Tuesday before, check in the parking, check out your bus stop, check out, the kind of time you need to get there, see what it looks like, walk in, look at the place, so that the following week when you go, you know exactly what you're going to see. There are no surprises. And so you can make yourself comfortable. The E stands for energized. The E in patience stands for energized. You're ready mentally, emotionally, and physically to do the 3+ hours of your best work that's required by the GRE. And finally, the S in PACES is secure. You feel safe, you feel secure because you have a backup test date. You hope you don't have to use it. You hope you get your best score. But if you can go into the test center saying all of these words, you had a good plan, you acted on your plan, you're confident, calm, and comfortable, you're energized, and you're secure, you feel safe, you have a fallback, you're just putting yourself in a sweet spot to get your best score. And why wouldn't you do that? That's what you owe to yourself. No self-sabotage here. You're not going to get your best score if you can't say all of these things. But all you need to do is do your plan, implement your plan, watch your energy, pick your backup test date, and you can go in and set yourself up to get your best score. So I have a few more slides that I could get to, Brandon, but I think we don't want to keep folks too late. If you can ask me a few questions right now, we can do that and then wrap up the webinar. And again, apologies to folks that we cut out. We're going to have to figure out where the glitch is and fix it for next time.
Absolutely, Jay. And so first, I want to thank you so very much for the information that you provided in the presentation. Even though we had a few cutouts, I think we all were still able to gain some additional insight that will help ultimately prepare for the exam. So let's see, one of the questions that came through, math is, or the quantitative section is always a huge area of contention for most folks. So there was a question on just what is your best advice for being able to guesstimate or to kind of work around some of the anxiety that comes with the quantitative section of the GRE. It looks like as I was asking the question, all righty. So we'll give Jay a moment to get back up here, and then I'll go ahead and try take two on that question. Let's see. I did, in the meantime, see a question come through from Jamik. I hope I pronounced your name right. I really hate pronouncing people's names wrong. But Jamik Adams, so just to be clear, GMS has GRE vouchers. Yes, we do. We do have vouchers on hand right now. We've been, over the past few weeks, we've been working through the backlog, but we've been able to award vouchers to some of the more recent requests. So go ahead and get your requests in as soon as possible, okay? Email academicsupport@gmsp.org. Again, academicsupport@gmsp.org. Include first and last name and your GMS ID, and just make sure we'll notify you if you're ineligible to receive a voucher because you've already received one. But kind of, try to be mindful of that before you make the request as well. Let's see if I have any. Okay, I think I see Jay coming back up.
I think I'm on also, Brandon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome back. Welcome back. So I won't waste too much time. I'll go ahead and delve back into the question that was on the table. Just wondering about the math or quantitative portion of the GRE. What are some tips, or do you have a key tip that you provide to individuals to help them, with the feeling a little bit confident, even if they have to guesstimate when it comes to completing that portion of the exam?
Sure. Well, the most important thing for math is to do 7 to 8 weeks of good prep before the GRE. That's the most important thing. Everyone should do that. If for students who are very rusty in math, who have extra rust, there's another book that you can use before GRE Prep, and that's called Math Smart 2. It's a book written by my Princeton Review colleagues, and it's not the only book of its type. You can find other books. Go to the bookstore, pull out Math Smart 2, pull out the books next to it, check them out. Those are books that go into arithmetic, basic algebra, and basic geometry that you should know before you do your GRE math prep. Concepts like addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, which sounds simple, but folks can be rusty on those. Fractions, decimals, percents, ratios. People can get rusty dealing with those if they haven't done them in a while. And simple algebra and simple geometry. So that's Math Smart 2, something to do before GRE Prep. Now, I didn't talk much about the methods for GRE Prep. Let me talk about those a little bit. You can take courses, and if you can afford a course, that's great. If you can't afford a course, you want to get a really good book. And there are a bunch of good books out there. The book I like, again, written by my people I know, is called Cracking the GRE. However, and the book will teach you methods and techniques for doing questions, like I showed you for the text completion question. One of the things about books, though, is they won't give you enough questions to do, and you need to do questions on computer. So the least expensive way to prepare for the GRE is to get a good book and then get access to questions on computer, so you can do a lot of questions on computer. So that's a long answer to your question, but I wanted to also talk about some of the ways to do GRE prep. There are online GRE courses. You can check them out. There are live online GRE courses, which means you meet with a teacher regularly, say every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. once a week for 10 weeks or something like that. So all of those things are available, but the least expensive is to buy a good book and to get access to GRE questions online, which can be done pretty cheaply. Again, let me repeat, for Math Rust, it's a book like Math Smart 2, which you do before your GRE prep, before that 8-week period. You have other questions, Brandon?
So you actually just tackled a few of them, but let me go and make sure that no other questions have come in, because a lot of you hit a couple of them right there. Let's see. So I guess you spoke a little bit about the prep classes, and there was a question that came through that asked, do you think it's worthwhile to pay for a test prep class as opposed to trying to go it on your own? Do
Well,
you have any thoughts around that?
yeah, going it on your own is a little harder. So if you're up for a harder experience, go on your own. It's a little bit easier typically to have a teacher who's an expert in this subject and who can answer your questions and figure out things.
Okay, so it dropped out a little bit, but I think that the gist of what Jay was saying was that you know, sometimes putting yourself on a regimen to prepare for one of these exams, or you know, without having a specified time and date that you're going to be going to an instructor that's going to help you, you know, prepare for the exam, kind of work you on a schedule. It's a different type of learning, right? It's almost the same thing with being in college, and you know, the difference between attending the study sessions provided by the professor or a tutor, and you know, kind of developing your own study schedule. So I think, you know, what I would say with that, as I try to see if I can get Jay back on, but I think my advice with that is to kind of just be in tune with what type of learner you are. You know, if you need someone that's going to be able to provide you with more examples, you know, actually having that instructor there present in front of you, or if you learn best with others and maybe you want to look into a test prep class. But if you're pretty much an independent learner and you work pretty well at your own pace, you won't get distracted or sidetracked, then, you know, it may be worth it trying to go it on your own, at least for the first one, and then you can maybe gauge from there, hey, should I take a test prep class or should I continue trying my own study schedule? So let me see if I can get Jay back for one more question. If not, we may wrap in a few moments. But you know, I'm loving all the questions coming through. Let's see, any more shout outs? Anybody else tweeted us, Facebooked us, or anything yet? Let's see. Hopefully, give me some thoughts. Anybody have any thoughts on the session? Anybody get anything from it? Like I said, I really do apologize for the technical difficulties we've been having, but you all have been hanging right in there, so we appreciate you and really, really hope that you have gained something from the session tonight. Let's see. Oh, okay, awesome. So I have a Jay Rosner is great shout out. I'll make sure we'll tell him that when he gets back on. Let's see, Lucas, I see a question about getting a link to the PowerPoint. I'll speak with Jay about that. It looks like Jay has popped back up. So we'll check on that.
Hi, Brandon. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes, I can.
Okay. Do we have another question?
Yes. So, well, first you had a couple of shout outs. I see a couple of people saying this has been great. Jay Rosner is great. So want to make sure that you receive that love.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then let's see. I think otherwise, is there any way that we can get some access to the information in the slides? Or
sure. I can
right.
give you the slides and you can make them available to the folks on this webinar.
Awesome. So you heard it here, folks. We do have the slides. I will begin the slides and I'll make sure that that they're up for you all to peruse through and to review back through. I think other than that, so that we don't cut out again, I
Okay.
think that I think that we're gonna wrap it up and really just thank you once more, Jay. I'm sure if we had everybody in the room, you'll hear thunderous applause right now. But since it's me, I'll do the best that I can. Thank you so very much for. Okay, I'm sorry. I see one question that came in
Go ahead.
that may be good for you. Is there anything we should read on a consistent basis, i.e., newspapers, articles, periodic journals, to better prepare for the verbal reasoning part of the test?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, a good reading program where you're reading for 30, 45 minutes a day, some good challenging material. I would suggest a good source is the New York Times, particularly the op-eds, because they tend to be just a little bit longer than GRE reading comp passages, but they're at about the same level of difficulty with about the same level of vocabulary. So a great way to do some long-term GRE prep. Now, this will work well if you're doing it for 4, 5, 6 months. This is not what you do in the 8 weeks before the test. In the 8 weeks before the test, you're working with the methods for answering questions. But if you have a couple of months before those 8 weeks and you get into a daily ritual of practicing reading, say, the New York Times op-eds or something equivalent for a half hour, 45 minutes a day, where you're sitting there with a dictionary, looking up the words that you don't know, building your vocabulary, that's a good long-term method for increasing your strength of reading and your vocabulary. It's particularly important for students who major in business and even tech fields where you're not doing that kind of humanities reading. The GRE reading comp passages tend to be humanities passages, and practicing, like I said, for months on the kind of source that I mentioned, New York Times op-eds, is a pretty good long-term way to build your reading strength and your vocabulary.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay, for providing that great tip. And thank you to NSS_Davivi. Hope I got that right. Thank you for that great last minute question. So I think now we really will wrap it up. Thanks again, Jay, for such a wonderful job and for such wonderful information for the scholars. I learned a lot myself, and we look forward to bringing you all another session, probably sometime in the spring, possibly. And definitely by then, we'll make sure that our technology cooperates a bit more with us. But best of luck to everyone who's planning on taking any one of the grad tests in the next few weeks. I know someone is taking the GRE next week. So best of luck to all of you, and thank you so much. And as soon as I get the slide information from Jay, I'll make sure to post it somewhere. And Jay, did you have anything that you would like to say as we wrap up?
Oh, just thanks to everybody for having patience through our technological glitches. I have a few more slides. We'll get to them in the spring when we do this again, but you've seen the most important slides, and the questions have been good. So I feel good that you got some really solid information tonight. Thanks to Brandon and the Gates folks and the UNCF folks for putting this on. I appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you so very much. Have a great evening, afternoon, night, everyone. And we'll see you back for another GRE prep session in the spring. Stay on the lookout for other Ask GMS webinars, which will be coming down the pipeline over the next few months. So keep an eye out on GMS social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and now Snapchat as well. So keep an eye out for us. And as you see other topics that intrigue you, interest you, go ahead and join us for a webinar, okay? All righty. Take care, everyone. Have a great evening.